Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we return to 1983 for the novelization of Return of the Jedi this time around. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. This, of course, is the last of the classic trilogy novelizations from Del Rey in the first time period in which they had the Star Wars license. You can find this in a few ways. There's plenty of different printings of it out there. I've covered some of that in the past, looking at things like the What is Classic Star Wars stuff in the supplemental edition here. I want to just take a look at the first printing of this, the first couple ways you could have gotten it, and the first time it was in Omnibus form here, the ones that I happen to own. We start out here, this is the original printing. Just like the rest of the Del Rey novels, it starts out in paperback as far as mass market goes, at least. Kind of cool, nice cover here. It's by James Kahn, if you didn't already know that. What's really kind of neat here is that this also includes pages with full color pictures from the movie in it, which is kind of nice here. It even says down there, fabulous 8-page color insert. So we have here Return of the Jedi. It's adding in that extra value there with the images. Now, if you wanted to get this in hardback, of course, it's just like the other ones with this classic era of publishing, particularly the film novelizations. You could get a hardback. You just had to go through the Sci-Fi Book Club to get it. That would be this, right? Pretty big size differential here. And this one, again, has those color picture pages inside it, all lumped together there in the middle. Now, you may want to get this in omnibus form with the other two film novelizations for the classic trilogy. One of the ways you could get that here is with the Star Wars Trilogy Special Omnibus Edition, as it says down there at the bottom. This is the one, of course, that I've shown you in times past that was signed by Alan Dean Foster. But he's not the writer of this one, that's James Kahn. This is the 1987 edition, but there have been plenty of other omnibus editions of these, plus single printings as well. These just happen to be the first printing of the thing. And there's really not a lot to say about this novelization. It reads very, very well, very, very close to what we get with the film. Not a lot of big twists and turns and surprises. It gives a little more detail to, say, the Battle of Endor. Gives us some interesting descriptions of some of the events with the Ewoks, for instance. It gives more of Moff Jerjerrod, like him being ordered to turn the super laser on Endor, and it basically works in just a handful of those little bitty deleted scenes that we see on, for instance, the Blu-ray, works them back into the story, or I guess worked it into the story before the film had cut it out of the final release. There's really, besides just the little bit of deleted scenes with Jerjerrod and stuff, that really stands out, there is one thing that really makes you go, huh, about this. And that is a conversation, the most famous part of this book, a conversation between Obi-Wan Kenobi, his spirit, and Luke Skywalker. It's the same conversation that we get in the film, only it adds bits and pieces. And there is a degree to which we also see some elaboration on similar events, the similar past events, in the conversation between Luke and Leia in Return of the Jedi. One of my favorite scenes of Return of the Jedi, there between Luke and Leia, because as soon as that's over with, Han has one of the most human moments in the entire trilogy with the whole, oh, you tell Luke, is that who you could tell? You know, a very male kind of response to it, plus being able to just turn back when he's frustrated. So, in any event, that new section here, or I guess new information that we got about the background of the characters here, somewhat resembles what we see in the prequels, but it does wind up bringing back one of those big continuity issues that this book sort of cements, at least until we're told in the prequels that, yeah, that was wrong. Lucas changed his mind. When Luke is speaking with Obi-Wan about the truth that Darth Vader is in fact his father, Obi-Wan says, "When I first encountered your father, he was already a great pilot. But what amazed me was how strongly the Force was with him. I took it upon myself to train Anakin in the ways of the Jedi. My mistake was thinking I could be as good a teacher as Yoda. I was not. Such was my foolish pride. The Emperor sensed Anakin's power, and he lured him to the dark side. My pride had terrible consequences for the galaxy." All right, so we're getting kind of a Greek tragedy thing here, hubris being the issue. In fact, it even uses the term hubris within the narrative here. Luke says, of course, there is still good in him, to which Ben replies, "I also thought he could be turned to the good side. It couldn't be done. He is more machine now than man, twisted and evil." To which Luke says, "I can't kill my own father, as we'd expect. You should not think of that machine as your father. When I saw what had become of him, I tried to dissuade him, to draw him back from the dark side. We fought. Your father fell into a molten pit. When your father clawed his way out of that fiery pool, the change had been burned into him forever. He was Darth Vader, without a trace of Anakin Skywalker, irredeemably dark, scarred, kept alive only by machinery and his own black will. Sounds a whole lot like what happens on Mustafar in a film we don't get until 2005, and this is in a book printed in 1983. Luke then responds, "I tried to stop him once. I couldn't do it." Ben, or Obi-Wan, continues, "Vader humbled you when you first met him, Luke, but that experience was part of your training. It taught you, among other things, the value of patience. Had you not been so impatient to defeat Vader then, you could have finished your training here with Yoda. You would have been prepared." "But I had to help my friends," he says. "And did you help them? It was they who had to save you. You achieved little by rushing back prematurely, I fear." "I found out Darth Vader was my father," something he whispers here. "To be a Jedi, Luke, you must confront and then go beyond the dark side, the side your father couldn't get past. Impatience is the easiest door, for you, like your father. Only your father was seduced by what he found on the other side of that door, and you have held firm. You're no longer so reckless now, Luke. You are strong and patient, and you are ready for your final confrontation." Again, we're back to the protesting, "I can't do it, Ben." "Then the Emperor has already won. You are our only hope." Some of this should sound familiar, some not so much. Yoda said I could train another to, not there was another, but Yoda said I could train another to. The other he spoke of is your twin sister. She will find it no easier than you to destroy Darth Vader. Sister? I don't have a sister. Obi-Wan then says, "To protect you both against the Emperor, you were separated when you were born. The Emperor knew, as I did, that one day, with the Force on their side, Skywalker's offspring would be a threat to him. For that reason, your sister has remained safely anonymous." At that point, we get a brief kind of rundown of what's going on in Luke's head, at which point he says, Leia is my sister. Goes on, as you would expect, "Your insight serves you well, but bury your feelings deep down, Luke. They do you credit, but they could be made to serve the Emperor." Now, you would figure that was it, but the scene goes on beyond what we see in the film. Ben continues, "When your father left, he didn't know your mother was pregnant." That's, of course, not true, though he didn't know it was twins. "Your mother and I knew he would find out eventually, but we wanted to keep you both as safe as possible for as long as possible. So I took you to live with my brother Owen on Tatooine, and your mother took Leia to live as the daughter of Senator Organa on Alderaan." Now, for the longest time in the EU, the belief was that Owen Lars was the brother of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Of course, then we get Attack of the Clones that turns that on its head and says, no, he's a stepbrother of Anakin Skywalker. He really actually is the step-uncle, Uncle Owen of Luke. But we later get the book series Jedi Apprentice, in which the author, Jude Watson, makes a reference in a book called The Hidden Past to Obi-Wan having a brother named Owen, which creates this whole other character out there of essentially Owen Kenobi, who apparently, I guess, must have been on Stew John, right? Because that's where Obi-Wan's apparently from. Lucas just comes in and just names Obi-Wan's home planet that had never been named before after Jon Stewart. So now we have Owen Kenobi instead of Owen Lars, but the Owen Lars thing began here. And we get more information. The Organa family was highborn and politically quite powerful in that system. Leia became a princess by virtue of lineage. No one knew she'd been adopted, of course. Although there's going to be some question about that a little bit in the way that this plays out here within the novel and even in the comic adaptation, right? Because what does Luke ask? Luke asks, do you remember your mother? Your real mother? Now, if she didn't know she was adopted, at least at some point, shouldn't she have said, "The hell are you talking about, my real mother? What? You saying that Mrs. Organa wasn't my mother? What?" Right, so she must have been told at some point. So it apparently was not public knowledge, but Leia must have known. But it was a title without real power since Alderaan had long been a democracy. Even so, the family continued to be politically powerful, and Leia, following in her foster father's path, became a senator as well. That's not all she became, of course. She became the leader of her cell in the alliance against the corrupt empire. And because she had diplomatic immunity, she was a vital link for getting information to the rebel cause. That's what she was doing when her path crossed yours. For her foster parents had always told her to contact me on Tatooine if her troubles became desperate. Luke says, "But you can't let her get involved now, Ben. Vader will destroy her." To which he responds, "She hasn't been trained in the ways of the Jedi in the way you have, Luke. But the Force is strong in her, as it is with all of your family. That is why her path crossed mine, because the Force in her must be nourished by a Jedi. You're the last Jedi now, Luke. But she returned to us, to me, to learn and grow, because it was her destiny to learn and grow and mine to teach. You cannot escape your destiny, Luke. Keep your sister's identity secret, for if you fail, she is truly our last hope. Gaze on me now, Luke. The coming fight is yours alone, but much will depend on its outcome, and it may be that you can draw some strength from my memory. There is no avoiding the battle, though. You can't escape your destiny. You will have to face Darth Vader again. Only those last two lines being something that we see after the whole, they may be used to serve the Emperor. It's like there's a whole chunk of that conversation gone from the film that appears here based on earlier drafts. They give us some hint as to what it was that Lucas was thinking. Then, of course, we have the scene in which Luke tells this to Leia, and she doesn't freak out about the whole adoption thing. Now, of course, we get in Return of the Jedi the whole thing about, how Leia has these memories, images really of her mother, talking about her being sad and beautiful, etc., etc. But we also get in the novel narration, and that narration provides some more detail to something that there's no way Leia could possibly have remembered. We have, Leia, do you remember your mother? Your real mother? The narration begins then. The question took her totally by surprise. She'd always felt so close to her adopted parents, it was as if they were her real parents. She almost never thought about her real mother. That was like a dream. Yet now Luke's question made her start. Flashes from her infancy assaulted her. Distorted visions of running. A beautiful woman. Hiding in a trunk. The fragments suddenly threatened to flood her with emotion. That's nothing that she could possibly remember because, of course, we wind up seeing in Revenge of the Sith that she is, of course, born at the end of the film, and Padme passes away almost immediately, right? Because she lost the will to live, right? Because surely having 2 children to raise is not an incentive to live. I really hope they eventually say that, yeah, it was the Force choke. It just made it harder for her to carry on because she was in such despair. As opposed to it being she lost the will to live right after giving birth to children. Seriously, kids can be bad. Terrible too suck, but you know what? Not that bad. I spend time around kids all the time when I teach. Even on the worst days, not a reason to stop having the will to live. Thank you very much, Padme. Suffice to say, this again goes into the embellishment of something that Lucas has really never himself managed to fully clarify in the way that we're supposed to reconcile that little bit with Leia in Return of the Jedi with the prequels. But I somewhat digress here. That's more of a prequel thing than it is this novel. So, James Kahn's novelization of Return of the Jedi, is it an essential read? Of course not. Seeing the film, that's essential. Reading the book, not so much. But it is the easiest and best read of all 3 of the novelizations of the classic trilogy. But again, that's sort of like being valedictorian of summer school. These were not the best novelizations out there. The prequel ones blow these away. But of them, this is the one I would check out if you're wanting to see how authors managed to take Lucas's scripts and turn them into prose fiction for other audiences, or in some cases, the same audiences. So, check it out if you get a chance, omnibus form, regular single printing, either way. It's a decent book, just isn't essential. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers. And please, don't lose the will to live. The show will be back soon.